Was it that attempt to go register and vote, or that plus lots of other things? What was it that caused you to want to go to law school?
It was a combination. I was really going to be a dentist, but I really wasn't positive. I had a background in biology and chemistry and air science, and I think what really was the turning point was that I could not get into University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill dental school at that time. The statement was that I needed 2 more courses in physical chemistry, and that the earliest I could get in would have been about 15 months later. And I came back and talked with another lawyer, a black lawyer, Kenneth Lee, who was from Hamlet, North Carolina, and who was a graduate of the University of North Carolina Law School. And we discussed it and talked about it, and he said, Henry said, that's what you ought to do. And I did. And I'd like to say that I went to the law school a little hesitant because of my background in terms of whether I would be qualified to enter the University of North Carolina Law School. And the person who looked at it said, well, I think you'd be okay. Said you'll have to pass the SAT. And not SAT, LSAT, right. And I think what impressed me was that I was in Greensboro at that time. I came back to Greensboro that day, and the next day I had a letter in the mail from the law school thanking me for coming down and telling me what I needed to do and telling me when the LSAT would be taken and things of that nature. And I felt good about that, you know, that maybe they want me to come and be a part of the law school.
So was it a good decision to go to law school?
It was the right decision for me, and with apologies to my dentist, every time I go to him, and he starts fumbling around in my mouth, I said, boy, I'm glad I went to law school. So I think I made the right decision. I feel good about it.
There were how many blacks in your law school class?
That was it.
You were it. So yes. Talk to us about
By the way, there was only one woman that graduated with me at the law school, and she later became the librarian at the Supreme Court of North Carolina. Really? So I was on the court as an associate justice at that time, and she was she was the librarian. I thought that was an interesting historical fact. But by the time I went to law school, first of all, I was married. And social things just weren't my concern. My concern, I was living in Greensboro most of the time and driving back and forth. And so my concern was to get my work and get my degree and get out of there. And so I wasn't worried about the social things. So somebody else will have to talk about that for the most part, except for one event that the class was having. And they were going to have it at some particular place, and the question was whether I could go. And to tell you the truth, I've forgotten exactly what happened in reference to that. But there were still the separate but, quote, equal things in a lot of situations, even in those days, because this was prior to the Civil Rights Acts that changed those things. But my classes were good. Luckily, the first exam I took, I made an A on it. And in those days, we used numbers so that nobody would know what name went with the numbers. But somehow, everybody tended to find out who made the A's in the class. And I think that gave me some respect among the class. And generally, I had no real problems there.
So, after law school, as a young lawyer then, and married, and you'd been living in Greensboro, I guess, since you came back from the military. Is that correct?
Essentially, yes. I spent a few months in New York, but essentially I moved to Greensboro.
And to tell me about what your first effort was to try to locate a job and move into the legal community in Greensboro.
Well, I finished in 1959. I recall some recruiters came to the campus And I recall the one offer that I had was to go with the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation at a salary of $5,000 and some dollars a year. And as I looked at that and decided that I didn't think I wanted to do that. I really wanted to practice law in North Carolina. I had no offers from any law firm or anything of that nature, and so I decided to go out and try it on my own. And so that's what I did. But again, I opened my office in a building with two other lawyers, J. Kenneth Lee, the same person who had encouraged me to go to law school, and Major High. I don't recall whether Major High was there or came later, but at any rate, I think the thing that I'm impressed by that was that Kenneth Lee told me that I could use his secretary until I could afford to hire a secretary of my own. And the secretary that he had was someone who'd been with him a long time. She was very good and that type of thing. And so that helped me a great deal. Also, I recall that one of my first cases that Kenneth sent the case to me was a person who was buying some property. And I remember that before I could talk to the person, he called me and told me what to ask and what to charge and the kinds of questions this person was probably going to ask me and what my responses should be and things of that nature. And so when the client came in, I mean, I felt real good, you know, that I knew what to ask and what to do, because in law school then, you didn't have any practical courses. I mean, you didn't know what to do. You know, client comes in, you look around, you say, what do you do? But he helped me a great deal in things of that nature. And eventually, after a while, I moved my office out on my own, and I thought I was moving along rather nicely.
Kenneth Lee was a mentor for you.
Yes.
Were there other mentors in the early stages of your career that played an important role?
Interestingly enough, there weren't a lot of black lawyers in North Carolina, and so I got to know all of them. So anytime I went to any city in North Carolina where there was a black lawyer, I went to his office first. And I would do that before I would go to the courthouse or to the particular place, that business where I was to go, because I wanted to find out what we call the lay of the land. You know, how was I going to be treated? Was anything in particular that I need to look out for and be sure that I don't say or don't do, and any suggestions that person might have. And I think that was pretty constant among the black lawyers, at least in North Carolina at that time. And so we always made it a habit of checking with that particular lawyer before we did anything really in that particular area.
So as you began your law practice and were in Greensboro and got involved in the community in various ways, tell us what some of the community involvements were and how you chose them.
How I chose them is maybe a little difficult question, but a lot of it had to do with associations. I went by Hayes Taylor YMCA, and that was an place where young boys, primarily at that time, participated in various sports and things of that nature. And again, we had at that time 2 YMCAs, one downtown for whites, and then this one in the black community, the Hayes Taylor for blacks. And so I started working with them and helping with their campaigns to raise money and things of that nature, and attending their annual meetings, where I got to meet a lot of people. And interestingly, some of the major corporate heads actually came to the Hayes Taylor annual meeting. People who know the area would know people like Caesar Cone, probably, and like that. But at any rate, I was a sole practitioner, and spent a good part of my time trying to make a living. Right. And I guess after about 2.5 years or so was when I got the call to join the United States Attorney's Office as an assistant United States attorney. So I had to give up my practice, and and start acting, representing the United States. I kind of like that, you know. I liked being able to stand up and say, may it please the court, my name is Henry Frye, and I represent the United States of America. And our position on this matter is, that was a big thing in those days because, again, we had no black in North Carolina that was in that type of position. And but the appointment was made by Kennedy, who was Attorney General at that time. And I had a good experience there, representing the United States.
How do you, before you get into that piece of your life, I'm interested in knowing, were you already a member of the Greensboro Bar Association then, at the time you were appointed U.S. Attorney, or did that occur afterwards?
I believe it occurred after that.
Had you tried to join before then?
I had inquired, but I had not pushed it. At that time, there were no black members, and I understand that there was some opposition to blacks becoming members. But 2 or 3 people that I know of had a lot to do with the fact that I was eventually admitted to the Bar Association. Jack Elam, who signed my application, as I recalled, and Herman Amasa Smith, who was the clerk, I believe, of the federal court at that particular time, and I don't know who else, but at that time there had been no blacks in the Greensboro Bar Association.